The double-edged sword, Trumponomics and the U.S.-Taiwan trade dynamic. Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to invite you to look behind the headlines of trade wars and explore the economic machinery of Trumponomics. Specifically, we will examine the America First policy and what happens when the United States builds a wall of tariffs against a key partner like Taiwan. To understand this, we must first understand the weapon of choice, the tariff. Imagine a toll booth set up at the U.S. border. When a Taiwanese semiconductor arrives, the U.S. government demands a fee, say 20% of its value. This is a tariff, essentially a tax on imports. Under Trumponomics, this wasn't just a one-way street. It introduced the concept of a reciprocal tariff. Think of this as a tit-for-tat strategy in a schoolyard dispute. If the U.S. imposes a tariff on Taiwanese electronics, claiming unfair trade practices, Taiwan might retaliate by imposing an equivalent tariff on U.S. machinery. We saw this dynamic globally when the U.S. placed tariffs on steel and aluminum, prompting trading partners to tax U.S. agricultural in return. Now, the government actually has another tool besides taxing imports. They could use a quota. While a tariff raises the price, a quota strictly limits the quantity. For example, saying only 1 million chips can enter this year. Why would a country choose a quota? Usually, it is to ensure a strict limit on foreign competition, regardless of price changes. However, economists generally prefer tariffs because the extra money paid, the tariff revenue, goes to the government. With a quota, that extra value often goes into the pockets of foreign sellers or lucky importers, rather than the public treasury. Furthermore, both tools create inefficiency, but tariffs are more transparent. Let us visualize what happens in the U.S. import market when these reciprocal tariffs are applied to Taiwanese goods. Picture a standard supply and demand graph. When the U.S. government imposes the tariff, it is like raising the floor price of these imported goods. Consequently, the domestic price in the U.S. rises because the price is higher. U.S. consumers buy less, and the quantity of imports falls. Now, we must look at the other side of the ocean, Taiwan's export market. For Taiwanese exporters, this U.S. tariffs acts like a decrease in demand. On our graph, the demand curves for Taiwan's exports shift to the left. This is a bad news for Taiwanese producers. They are forced to sell less, and the equilibrium price they receive drops. They are squeezed from both sides, lower volume and lower revenue. So, how does this affect the well-being of both nations? For Taiwan, the impact is largely negative. Taiwanese producers lose profit and market share, while Taiwanese consumers might see slightly lower prices domestically if excess goods are dumped back home. The overall economy suffers because the export sector is a critical engine of Taiwan's GDP. The government gains no revenue from a U.S. tax. For the United States, the picture is more complex but ultimately grim. There are winners. The U.S. government collects tariff revenue, and the U.S. domestic producers who compete with Taiwan benefit from less competition. However, the biggest losers are U.S. consumers, who pay significantly higher prices. According to standard economic theory, the loss of consumers is greater than the gains to producers and the government combined. This net loss is what we call deadweight loss, wealth that is simply destroyed by market inefficiency. In conclusion, while reciprocal tariffs are powerful political tools under Trumponomics, the economic reality is that they shrink trade, hurt consumers, and often result in a net welfare loss for both the United States and Taiwan.